The text message was supposed to go to her landlord. Maya Reeves double-checked the number twice before hitting send, her thumb trembling slightly as she typed out the words that burned with humiliation. I know I'm 3 weeks late. Please give me until Friday. I promise I'll have the rent money. I'm begging you. She stared at the screen of her cracked phone, watching the little checkmark confirm delivery, and felt something cold settle in her chest. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the empty tables she'd been wiping down for the past hour. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Maya was so tired she could barely remember what day of the week felt like anymore. She pocketed her phone and went back to rolling silverware, trying not to think about the eviction notice taped to her apartment door or the fact that her bank account had exactly $12.38 in it. But you know what? Before I go any further with what happened next, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this. If you're listening right now, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps keep these stories coming. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because I love knowing how far these real-life stories travel. Anyway, back to Maya and that text message that was about to change everything. Her phone buzzed exactly 3 minutes later. Maya's heart jumped. Maybe her landlord, Mr. Patterson, actually had a heart after all. Maybe he'd give her the extension. She pulled out her phone, her fingers leaving damp marks on the screen from the cleaning solution. The message made her blood run cold. You have the wrong number. Who is this? Simple words, professional tone, but something about seeing them made Maya's stomach drop. She looked at the number she'd texted. Then she looked at the contact saved as Patterson Landlord in her phone. The numbers were different, 1 digit off. Her exhausted brain had transposed 2 numbers when she'd saved the contact 3 months ago, and she'd been texting the wrong person this entire time. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she typed back frantically. Wrong number. Please disregard. So sorry to bother you. The response came immediately. Who is this? Answer the question. Maya's hands were shaking now. There was something commanding about the message, something that made her feel like she'd stumbled into a room she had no business entering. My name is Maya. I thought I was texting my landlord. Again, I'm very sorry. Won't happen again. She turned off her phone's screen and shoved it back in her apron pocket, her heart pounding. It was just a wrong number. People sent wrong number texts all the time. Nothing to worry about. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the kitchen and called out to Marcus, the night cook, that she was heading home. The November air hit her face like a slap as she stepped outside, and she pulled her thin jacket tighter around her body. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. She'd make the 3:15 a.m. bus if she hurried. She didn't notice the black sedan parked across the street. Didn't see how its engine started exactly when she began walking. Didn't register how it followed her at a careful distance as she made her way down the empty sidewalk, her breath coming out in white puffs in the freezing air. Maya Reeves was 26 years old, though some days she felt twice that. She'd moved to Seattle from a small town in Oregon 3 years ago, with dreams that now seemed laughably naive. She was going to be a photographer. She was going to capture the raw beauty of urban life, sell her work to galleries, maybe get a book deal. Instead, she worked double shifts at Pete's Diner, slept 4 hours a night if she was lucky, and hadn't picked up her camera in 8 months. The equipment was in a box under her bed, gathering dust along with her dreams. She thought about her mother sometimes, wondered what advice she'd give if she were still alive. Her mom had died when Maya was 19. Cancer, quick and brutal, and her father had remarried within a year to a woman who made it clear that Maya was no longer welcome in the house she'd grown up in. So she'd left, packed everything she owned into her beat-up Honda Civic, and driven north until the money ran out. Seattle seemed as good a place as any to reinvent herself, except she hadn't reinvented anything. She'd just become another invisible person in a city full of people trying to survive. The bus was late. Maya stood at the stop, shifting her weight from foot to foot, trying to stay warm. A few other night shift workers waited with her. A woman in hospital scrubs who kept yawning. A man in a security guard uniform who was scrolling through his phone. Normal people living normal lives. Maya wondered if any of them had ever been as broke as she was right now. Probably. Seattle was expensive, and the wealth was concentrated in pockets while everyone else scrambled for the crumbs. She pulled out her phone to check the bus tracker app. 3 new messages. Her heart sank. The unknown number. Maya, do you need money? How much do you owe? Answer me. She stared at the messages, her mind racing. This was crazy. Who asks a complete stranger if they need money? Scammers, that's who. Or worse. She should block the number. She should definitely block the number. But her fingers moved on their own. Why would you ask me that? The response was immediate. Your message said you were 3 weeks late on rent and begging for time. That suggests financial distress. I'm offering assistance. I don't know you. Correct. But I know what desperation sounds like. How much? Maya's thumb hovered over the keyboard. This was insane. Absolutely insane. I'm not giving you information. This feels like a scam. Understandable. I'm not asking for your bank details or social security number. I'm asking how much you need to avoid eviction. Humor me. $1,800. She sent it before she could stop herself, then immediately followed with, but I'm not accepting money from strangers. That's how people end up dead. Practical. I respect that. My name is Kenji. I'm a businessman. Consider this an investment. An investment in what? You don't know me. Everyone deserves a chance to not be destroyed by circumstances. Call it charity if it makes you feel better. Maya's hands were trembling, and not from the cold anymore. People don't just give away money. What do you want? Nothing. But if you insist on terms, then this. Tell me your story. Why Seattle? Why are you working late nights at a diner when your texts suggest education and intelligence? The bus pulled up, its brakes hissing. Maya climbed aboard with the others, swiped her pass, and collapsed into a seat near the back. She stared at the message. This was the part where she should absolutely stop engaging. Block the number. Tell someone what was happening. Call the police even. Instead, she started typing. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the humiliation of being so broke that even a stranger's pity felt like water in a desert. Maybe she just needed to tell someone, anyone, the truth of her life. I came here to be a photographer 3 years ago. My mom died. My dad remarried and made it clear I wasn't welcome anymore. I thought I could make it work here, build something. But everything's expensive and I'm barely surviving. I work 60 hours a week and still can't make rent. I haven't taken a photograph in months because I sold my good camera to pay for a root canal. I eat ramen most nights. I'm tired all the time. And I'm starting to think I made a terrible mistake leaving Oregon. She sent the message and immediately regretted it. Too much information. Too vulnerable. She was giving ammunition to a potential predator. But what came back surprised her. Photography. What drew you to it? Not mockery, not false sympathy. Just a simple question. Maya found herself answering. My mom gave me a camera for my 16th birthday. One of those old Nikons. She said everyone should have a way to prove they existed, that they saw things worth remembering. I started taking photos of everything. Light through trees, strangers on buses, empty parking lots at dawn. It felt like I was collecting evidence of beauty in places people overlooked. And now you've stopped. Can't collect beauty when you're drowning. Poetic. Also defeatist. Beauty exists regardless of your bank account. Maya felt a flicker of irritation. Easy to say when you're offering strangers $1,800. Fair point. What if I told you I'd pay your rent, and in exchange, you send me a photograph once a week? Something you see in Seattle. No expectations, no judgment. Just proof that you're still seeing the world through that lens. That makes no sense as a business arrangement. I'm eccentric. Humor me. Maya stared at the messages until her vision blurred. This was either the kindest gesture someone had made in years, or the beginning of something very, very bad. I need to think about it. Take your time. But Maya, your landlord is probably going to start eviction proceedings by the end of the week. I assume you know this. She did know this. Mr. Patterson had made it very clear in his last note. How would you even send money? I'm not giving you my bank info. Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, take your pick. You control the transaction. Check my profile first if it makes you feel safer. Maya got off at her stop. A run-down neighborhood where half the streetlights were broken and every building looked like it was one earthquake away from collapse. She climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, the eviction notice still taped to her door like a scarlet letter. Inside, the studio was freezing. She kept the heat at 60 to save money, and nearly empty. A mattress on the floor, a small table with one chair, a hot plate and a mini fridge, the box of camera equipment under the bed. She sat on the mattress and pulled out her phone, searched for the number that had been texting her. It came back to a business listing, Yamada Import Export LLC. She searched that next. It was a legitimate company, registered in Seattle, with an office in the International District. Import and export of what? The website was vague. Facilitating trade connections between Pacific Rim nations and North American markets. Corporate speak that said everything and nothing. She found Kenji Yamada listed as the CEO. There was a photo, a man in his late 40s, salt and pepper hair, sharp suit, the kind of face that was handsome in a severe way. He looked like someone who made decisions that affected people's lives and didn't lose sleep over it. Maya opened Venmo and searched his name. The profile existed. Public transactions showed regular payments for things like office supplies, consulting fee, dinner, nothing suspicious, nothing that screamed danger. She typed out a message. If you send money, I'll send photos. 1 per week. For how long? Until you don't need the money anymore. Or until you decide you don't want to send photos. Whichever comes first. Why are you doing this? Because I can. Because I remember what it feels like to be desperate. And because something tells me your photographs are worth seeing. Maya closed her eyes. Every instinct told her this was wrong. Dangerous. Too good to be true. But her rent was due, and she was out of options. She'd already looked into payday loans. The interest rates were predatory. She'd considered selling plasma, but the nearest center was closed due to staffing shortages. She had no family to call, no friends close enough to lend her nearly $2,000. This stranger with his bizarre offer was impossibly her best option. Okay, Venmo me. Same username as this number. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a notification. $1, $800 had been deposited into her Venmo account by Kenji Yamada. The note said, "First photo due next Tuesday. Take your time. See something worth seeing." Maya stared at the notification until the screen went dark. Then she pulled the box out from under her bed, dug through the foam padding, and retrieved her old Nikon. The battery was dead. She'd have to charge it. But just holding it again felt like greeting an old friend. She fell asleep with the camera next to her pillow, her mind spinning with questions about who Kenji Yamada really was and what she'd just agreed to. She didn't know that across the city, in a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, Kenji was staring at his phone with an expression his associates would have found shocking. He looked almost amused, certainly intrigued. He'd received that desperate text by accident, a wrong number that should have been deleted and forgotten. Instead, he'd responded. He'd engaged. And now he'd committed to paying a stranger's rent in exchange for weekly photographs. His assistant, Takeshi, stood in the doorway, careful not to speak until acknowledged. "Everything all right, Yamada-san?" Kenji didn't look up from his phone. "Tell me something, Takeshi. When was the last time you did something completely irrational?" "I don't understand the question, sir." "Something with no strategic purpose, no advantage, just an impulse." Takeshi considered this carefully. "I bought my daughter a very expensive violin last year. She'd never expressed interest in music, but I thought she should have the option. Does that count?" "Did she play it?" "Once. It's in the closet now." Kenji finally looked up, a slight smile on his face. "Then yes, that counts. Good night, Takeshi." "Good night, sir." After his assistant left, Kenji returned to the window. The city sprawled before him, millions of lights representing millions of lives he'd never touch or know. Somewhere out there was Maya Reeves, a broke waitress with a dead camera and enough pride to hesitate before accepting help. He wondered what she'd photograph first, wondered if she had any idea who she'd texted by mistake. Because Kenji Yamada wasn't just a businessman. He was the head of Seattle's largest Yakuza organization, a position he'd inherited from his father and refined with the ruthless efficiency of a man who understood that power was about control, not theatrics. The import-export business was legitimate enough, most of it anyway. The rest was carefully structured, quietly managed, and completely invisible to people like Maya Reeves. He should have blocked her number the moment she texted. Should have deleted the message and moved on. He dealt with desperate people every day, and compassion was a luxury he couldn't afford in his position. But something about her words had caught him. The vulnerability. The fight underneath the exhaustion. She reminded him of his sister, who died 20 years ago in circumstances he still couldn't think about without feeling rage. So he'd made an irrational decision. He'd helped her. And now he was curious to see what would come of it. Just a small indulgence, he told himself. A brief deviation from the careful control he maintained over every aspect of his life. Nothing would come of it. She'd send some photographs. He'd look at them, and eventually she'd get back on her feet and stop needing his money. Simple. Contained. He had no way of knowing that his simple impulse had just set in motion a chain of events that would threaten everything he'd built, challenge every rule he'd lived by, and force him to make choices no one in his position should ever have to make. The Yakuza operated on tradition, honor, and the absolute primacy of the organization over individual desires. Personal connections were leverage, vulnerabilities were weapons, and falling for someone, truly falling, not the transactional arrangements he was accustomed to, was the kind of mistake that could get people killed. But that was all in the future. Tonight, he was just a man who decided to help a stranger. Tomorrow, Maya would pay her rent, charge her camera, and step back out into the city looking for something worth photographing. And the distance between them, a waitress in a freezing studio apartment and a Yakuza boss in a luxury penthouse, would remain exactly what it should be. Insurmountable. Except distance has a way of collapsing when neither party is paying attention. Maya stood in Pike Place Market at dawn on Sunday, her camera hanging around her neck like it belonged there. The fishmongers were setting up, and the early morning light was hitting the metal stalls in a way that made everything look silver and gold at the same time. She'd been up since 4 a.m., unable to sleep, her mind racing with the impossibility of what had happened. She'd paid her rent the day before, watching Mr. Patterson's eyebrows shoot up when she handed him cash. "Thought you were broke," he'd said with his usual lack of tact. "Got paid," she'd lied, and left it at that. Now she was hunting for her first photograph. She'd made a promise, and Maya Reeves kept her promises even when they were made to mysterious strangers who sent money to wrong numbers. She circled the market 3 times before she found it, a moment so perfect it made her breath catch. An elderly Japanese man was arranging salmon on ice, his weathered hands moving with the precision of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. But what caught her eye was his expression. He was smiling at the fish like they were old friends. Like this morning ritual at dawn wasn't work but a kind of meditation. She raised her camera and clicked. The light, the hands, the smile, the silver fish against the white ice. It was perfect. She sent it to Kenji's number with a simple caption. Proof of beauty in overlooked places. His response came 2 hours later. Excellent. The composition is strong. You have a good eye. You know photography? I appreciate art. There's a difference. Maya found herself smiling as she walked home. It felt good to hold a camera again. Felt good to look at the world through a lens instead of just trudging through it. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely lost. The week passed in its usual blur of double shifts and exhaustion, but now there was something different. Maya kept her camera with her, tucking it carefully into her bag when she went to work. During breaks, she'd step outside and look for photographs, the way light hit a puddle. A homeless man's dog sleeping peacefully despite everything, steam rising from a street grate in patterns that looked like ghosts. She didn't send these to Kenji, not yet, but she took them, collected them, started seeing the city again instead of just surviving it. On Thursday night, Marcus noticed. "You seem different," he said, flipping burgers with the ease of someone who could do this job in his sleep. "You win the lottery or something?" "Or something," Maya said, wiping down the counter. "Just having a better week." "Good. You were starting to look like a ghost. No offense. None taken. I felt like one." The diner's door chimed, and 3 men walked in. Maya glanced up automatically, her customer service smile already in place, and then froze. The men were wearing expensive suits, the kind that didn't belong in Pete's Diner at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. They moved with careful precision, scanning the space before sitting in a booth near the back. One of them caught her eye and nodded, a gesture that felt more like an assessment than a greeting. Maya's instincts prickled. Something felt off. She grabbed 3 menus and approached the table, her smile fixed in place. "Good evening. Can I get you gentlemen something to drink?" The man in the middle, older, with gray at his temples and eyes that missed nothing, studied her for a moment before speaking. His English was perfect, but accented. "Coffee, black, all 3 of us." "Coming right up." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Excuse me, miss. Your name?" Every nerve in Maya's body went on alert. "Maya, is there something else you need?" "Just making conversation." "Maya what?" "Just Maya," she said, keeping her tone polite but firm. "I'll get that coffee for you." She walked back to the counter, her heart hammering. Marcus was watching the men through the kitchen window. "Those guys give you weird vibes?" he asked quietly. "Very weird vibes. Keep an eye on them?" "Already on it." Maya poured 3 coffees, her hands steady despite the anxiety crawling up her spine. When she delivered them, the older man was on his phone, speaking rapid Japanese. He barely acknowledged her when she set the cups down. The other 2 men didn't touch their coffee. They just sat there, watching the door, watching her, watching everything. They stayed for 45 minutes. Ordered nothing else. Left a $100 bill on the table for 3 cups of coffee and walked out without waiting for change. Maya stared at the money, her mind racing. This wasn't normal. This was something else entirely. She pulled out her phone and texted Kenji without really thinking about why. "Do you know people who speak Japanese and wear expensive suits and act like they're on a stakeout?" His response was immediate. "Where are you?" "Work. Pete's Diner on Capitol Hill." "Why?" "What did they look like?" Maya described them as best she could. 3 men, late 30s to early 50s, dark suits. One had a scar on his left hand. Another wore a watch that probably cost more than her car. The third had a tattoo peeking out from under his collar. She'd caught a glimpse when he turned his head. Kenji's next message made her blood run cold. "Lock yourself in the bathroom. Now. I'm sending people." "What? Why?" "Maya, do what I say. Lock yourself in the bathroom and don't come out until someone named Takeshi comes to get you. He'll show you ID. Trust no one else." "You're scaring me. I'm keeping you safe. Go. Now." Maya's hands were shaking. She looked at Marcus, who was frowning at her expression. "I need to use the bathroom," she said, trying to keep her voice level. "If anyone asks for me, tell them I'll be a few minutes." "You okay?" "I don't know yet." The diner's bathroom was tiny and smelled like industrial cleaner. Maya locked the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. What the hell was happening? Why would Kenji tell her to hide? Who were those men? She pulled out her phone again. "Why am I hiding in a bathroom? What's going on?" "Those men work for a rival organization. They're looking for leverage against me. Someone must have mentioned your name and they're connecting dots." "What organization? What are you talking about?" There was a long pause. Then, "I'll explain when you're safe. Just trust me. Please." Maya's mind was spiraling. Organization, rival, leverage. These were words from movies, not real life, not her real life. She was a waitress, she took photographs, she had nothing to do with whatever Kenji was involved in, except she'd accepted his money, sent him photographs, texted him regularly over the past week. And now men in expensive suits were asking for her by name. "Oh my God," she whispered to the empty bathroom. "What have I gotten into?" 20 minutes passed. Maya sat on the closed toilet lid, listening to the sounds of the diner filtering through the door. Normal sounds, the clatter of dishes, Marcus's voice taking orders, the door chime announcing customers. Everything was normal except for the fact that she was hiding in a bathroom because a man she'd never met told her to. Then she heard it. Raised voices. The door chime again. Multiple people entering. Marcus saying something sharp. A crash. Breaking dishes. Maya's breath caught. She pulled out her phone to call 911, but before she could, someone knocked on the bathroom door. 3 sharp raps. Maya Reeves? My name is Takeshi. Yamada-san sent me. I'm going to slide my ID under the door. A Washington driver's license appeared. Takeshi Mori. The photo matched the voice. Japanese, middle-aged, serious expression. But anyone could fake an ID. How do I know you're really from Kenji? He said to tell you. Proof of beauty in overlooked places. That was the caption on the photograph you sent him on Sunday. The fishmonger at Pike Place Market. Maya's hands fumbled with the lock. She opened the door to find Takeshi standing there in a dark suit, flanked by 2 other men who looked like they could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. Behind them, the diner was in chaos. Tables overturned, broken plates on the floor. Marcus was on his phone, probably with the police, and there, near the door, were the 3 men from earlier. One of them was bleeding from his nose. They looked furious. We need to go, Takeshi said calmly. Right now. What about Marcus, the diner? Your coworker is unharmed. The police are on their way, but you cannot be here when they arrive. Questions will be asked that you don't want to answer. Come with me. Maya's survival instincts warred with her confusion. But the 3 men from earlier were staring at her with expressions that made her stomach turn. Takeshi offered his arm, not touching her, but making it clear he was there to help. Please, Miss Reeves. Yamada-san was very specific. I'm to keep you safe. She went with him. What choice did she have? They walked out the back entrance where 2 black cars were waiting. Takeshi opened the door to the first one, and Maya climbed in. The interior was leather and smelled like expensive cologne. And there, in the back seat, was Kenji Yamada, in person. He looked exactly like his photo. Sharp features, graying hair, a face that could be kind or terrifying depending on the angle. Right now, he looked concerned. Are you hurt? He asked immediately. No, scared, confused. What the hell is happening? We need to drive first. Then I'll explain everything. The car pulled away as sirens began wailing in the distance. Maya watched the diner disappear behind them, watched her normal life recede with every block they traveled. She turned to face Kenji, this stranger who'd somehow become tangled in her existence. Start talking, right now, or I'm getting out of this car at the next light. He met her eyes, and something in his expression shifted. Regret, maybe, or resignation. My name is Kenji Yamada. I run an import-export business in Seattle, which is true. I also run the Yamada Gumi, the largest Yakuza organization on the West Coast, which is also true. Maya stared at him. Yakuza, like the Japanese mafia. Essentially, yes. And I've been texting a mafia boss for a week. Yes. And now other mafia people are after me. The Koriyama Gumi? Yes. They're a rival organization from Osaka who've been trying to establish territory in Seattle. When they learned I'd been in contact with you, they saw an opportunity to create leverage. Maya's laugh was slightly hysterical. Leverage. I'm leverage. I'm a broke waitress who can barely pay rent, and now I'm leverage in some kind of mob war? I'm sorry, Kenji said, and he sounded like he meant it. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have anticipated this. I put you in danger. You think? Maya's voice was rising. I trusted you. I thought you were just some eccentric rich guy who liked photography. I thought... She stopped, her breath coming fast. Oh God, my apartment. If they know my name, they know where I live. We've already moved your belongings, Takeshi said from the front seat. Everything from your apartment is in storage. You can't go back there. You broke into my apartment? We had a key made, Takeshi said, as if this was a completely reasonable thing to admit. We were very careful with your things, especially the camera equipment. Maya pressed her hands to her face. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem was whether she could afford to buy milk with her ramen. Now she was in the back of a luxury car with a Yakuza boss, being told her life was in danger because she'd sent a wrong number text. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe, Kenji said. I have a property outside the city. Secure. Private. You can stay there until we neutralize the threat. Neutralize the threat? You mean what exactly? I mean, I'll make it clear to the Koriyamagumi that you're under my protection and therefore untouchable. They'll back off. How will you make that clear? Kenji's expression hardened. You don't want to know the details. Actually, I very much want to know the details. I'm not some damsel who's going to just nod along while you do illegal things on my behalf. Miss Reeves. Maya. If I'm leverage in your mob war, you can call me Maya. A slight smile crossed Kenji's face. Maya. The situation is complicated. The Yakuza operates on rules, tradition, honor. If I claim you're under my protection, that has specific meaning. The Koriyamagumi will respect it, or there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that might end up on the news. Maya closed her eyes. This is not my life. This cannot be my life. I know, and I will fix this. I promise you, I will fix this. The car drove for another 30 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading into the hills. They turned onto a private road, passed through a security gate, and finally pulled up to a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. All glass and wood and modern architecture nestled into the forest with views of the mountains in the distance. Under different circumstances, Maya might have found it beautiful. Right now, it just looked like a very expensive prison. Takeshi opened her door. This way, please. Inside, the house was immaculate. Hardwood floors, minimalist furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Maya would make in 10 years. Kenji led her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment had been. You'll be safe here. There's food in the kitchen, clothes in the closet if you need them. Everything you need. Except freedom. Accept that for the moment. I'm sorry. Maya turned to face him. Why did you help me? The truth this time. Kenji was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. You reminded me of someone I lost. My sister. She had your same determination, your fight underneath the exhaustion. I saw your text, and I thought maybe I could help someone this time. Maybe I could do something right for once. And instead, you put me in danger. Yes, which is why I will fix it. Whatever it takes. He left her alone then, closing the door softly behind him. Maya sat on the bed, a bed so comfortable it felt obscene, and tried to process everything that had happened. 12 hours ago, she'd been a normal person with normal problems. Now she was hidden in a safe house, protected by a Yakuza boss, hunted by his rivals. It was like she'd fallen through a crack in reality into some alternate version of her life. She pulled out her phone and saw 17 missed calls from Marcus. A dozen texts asking if she was okay, if she needed help. What the hell had happened at the diner? She typed out a message. I'm safe. Can't explain right now. I'm so sorry about the mess. I'll make it right. But how could she make it right? How could anything be right after this? Maya walked to the window. Outside, she could see guards patrolling the property. Men in suits with weapons they weren't bothering to hide. This was her reality now, at least for the moment. She was trapped in luxury, protected by criminals, all because she'd sent a text to the wrong number. She thought about her mother, about what she'd say if she could see this situation. Her mom had always been practical. When life gets weird, she used to say, find the solid ground. Find the one thing you can control and hold on to it. Maya's solid ground had always been her photography. The camera didn't lie. It didn't have ulterior motives. It just captured what was there. She grabbed her Nikon from her bag. Thank God Takeshi had packed it, and went back to the window. The light was changing as evening approached, casting long shadows across the property. She raised her camera and started shooting. The guards, the trees, the way the sun hit the glass walls. She didn't know why she was doing it. Didn't know what good photographs would do in this situation. But it was the one thing she could control. The one piece of her normal life she could hold on to while everything else spiraled into chaos. In his office downstairs, Kenji watched the security monitors. He could see Maya in the guest room, camera to her face, taking photographs of his property like she was documenting evidence. He'd made so many mistakes in his life, but this one felt particularly cruel. He'd meant to help her, meant to do one good thing in a life defined by morally gray decisions. Instead, he'd dragged her into his world. A world where kindness was weakness, and every connection was a vulnerability to be exploited. Takeshi entered without knocking. The Koriyama-gumi sent a message. They want to meet. They're proposing a trade. No, Yamada-san. Perhaps we should hear their terms. No. Kenji's voice was steel. Maya is not a bargaining chip. She's under my protection. Make that absolutely clear. They'll escalate. Let them try. Takeshi bowed slightly. As you wish. But sir, the council will have questions. They'll want to know why you're risking conflict over a civilian who means nothing to the organization. Tell the council I'll address their concerns when appropriate. For now, secure the perimeter and make sure Miss Reeves has everything she needs. She's a guest, not a prisoner. After Takeshi left, Kenji returned his attention to the monitors. Maya had lowered her camera and was staring out at the mountains, her expression somewhere between terrified and determined. He'd seen that expression before on his sister's face, right before everything fell apart. Before the rival organization took her as leverage, before his father had refused to negotiate, before they'd found her body 3 days later as a message. Kenji had been 24 then. He'd sworn he'd never let anyone become a target because of him again, had kept his distance from everyone except those already part of the organization, had built walls so high that nothing and no one could touch him. And yet here he was, breaking every rule he'd made, because a stranger had sent him a desperate text and reminded him that underneath all the power and control, he was still human. The irony wasn't lost on him. The thing that might finally destroy him wasn't a rival organization or a federal investigation or a business deal gone wrong. It was a broke waitress with a camera and kind eyes who'd accidentally texted her way into his carefully controlled life and made him remember what it felt like to care about someone's survival. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting everything gold and red. Inside, Maya took photographs of shadows and light, trying to hold on to the one thing that still made sense. And somewhere in Seattle, the Koriyama-gumi was making plans. Because in their world, there were no accidents. There was only leverage and weakness. And Kenji Yamada had just shown them both. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. Maya stayed in the safe house, alternating between anxiety and boredom. Kenji was mostly absent, handling what he vaguely called business matters. Takeshi brought her meals, answered questions when he could, and generally acted like a very professional prison guard. Except she wasn't a prisoner, she kept telling herself. She could leave any time, except she couldn't, not really. Because out there were people who wanted to use her against Kenji, and she had no idea how to protect herself from that. On Sunday morning, she found Kenji in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I've been better. What's happening? Are you going to tell me anything, or am I just supposed to sit here and wait?" "The Koriyama-gumi is being difficult. They're refusing to acknowledge my claim of protection. They think I'm bluffing." "Are you?" "No." He poured 2 cups of coffee, slid one across the counter to her. "I've called a meeting with the regional council, formal arbitration. They'll rule on the matter, and the Koriyama-gumi will have to accept it." "When?" "Tomorrow night. Once it's settled, you can go back to your life." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Can I, though? Go back? They know who I am, where I work, where I lived. I'll make sure you're safe. New apartment if you want, different neighborhood, security measures. I don't want your money for security measures. I don't want any of this. I know, I'm sorry." They stood in silence for a moment, the morning light streaming through the windows. Maya studied him, this man who'd accidentally become central to her life. He looked human in a way she hadn't expected. Tired, worried, carrying the weight of decisions she couldn't begin to understand. "Can I take your photograph?" she asked suddenly. Kenji looked surprised. "Why?" "Because you're part of this story now, and I document things. That's what I do." He considered this, then nodded. "All right." Maya grabbed her camera. She didn't pose him or direct him, just captured him as he was. standing in his kitchen at dawn, holding a coffee cup, looking out at the mountains with an expression that held too many secrets. The light was perfect, soft, and honest. When she looked at the image on her screen, she saw something she hadn't expected. Loneliness. This powerful man, surrounded by guards and money and influence, looked profoundly alone. She showed him the photo. "This okay?" Kenji stared at it for a long moment. "You see too much. Occupational hazard. I look old. You look human." Something shifted in his expression. "Thank you for that." The next evening, Kenji left for the arbitration meeting. "Stay inside," he instructed Maya. "Takeshi and the security team will be here. Don't answer the door for anyone. I should be back by midnight." "What if you're not?" "Then Takeshi will take you to a secondary location. You'll be safe regardless." "That's not what I'm asking." Kenji met her eyes. "Then the answer is, I've survived this long by being very good at what I do. I'll be back." He left, and the house fell into tense silence. Maya tried to distract herself with television, with reading, with editing photographs. Nothing worked. She kept checking her phone, kept watching the clock, kept listening for sounds that would indicate something had gone wrong. By 11 p.m., her nerves were frayed. By midnight, she was pacing. At 12:30 a.m., when headlights finally swept across the driveway, she nearly collapsed with relief. But when the door opened, it wasn't just Kenji who entered. It was Kenji plus 6 other men in suits, all of them talking in rapid Japanese, their voices tight with tension. Maya watched from the top of the stairs as they gathered in the living room. Kenji was in the center, his expression harder than she'd ever seen it. Whatever had happened at the meeting, it hadn't gone well. Takeshi noticed her and approached the stairs. "Miss Reeves, you should return to your room." "What happened?" "Business matters. Nothing for you to worry about." "Takeshi, what happened?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "The council ruled against Yamada-san. They said his claim of protection isn't valid because you have no formal connection to the organization. The Koriyama-gumi is within their rights to pursue leverage." Maya's blood ran cold. "So I'm not safe." "I didn't say that. Yamada-san is exploring other options." Before Maya could respond, she heard Kenji's voice rise above the others, sharp and commanding. One word she understood: Kikan. And then all the men went silent. Takeshi closed his eyes briefly. "Oh no." "What did he say?" "He proposed a solution, one the council will have to accept. But Miss Reeves, I would advise—" Kenji appeared at the base of the stairs. "Maya, I need to speak with you. Privately." She followed him to his office, her heart racing. Whatever was coming, it was big. Kenji closed the door and turned to face her, his expression somewhere between determined and apologetic. "The council won't recognize my protection claim, because you're a civilian with no ties to the organization. But there's one type of connection they cannot ignore, one that would make you absolutely untouchable." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to marry me." Maya stared at Kenji like he'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. "Marry you? You want me to marry you?" "It's the only way to make you untouchable within Yakuza tradition. The wife of an Oyabun, a boss, is sacred, beyond retribution. The Koriyama-gumi would have to back off completely." "This is insane. We don't even know each other." "I'm aware of that. But Maya, they're not going to stop. The council gave them permission to pursue you as leverage. That means kidnapping, torture. They'll use you to get to me, and they won't care what happens to you in the process." His voice was steady, but his eyes held genuine fear. "I won't let that happen. Not again." "Again?" Kenji turned away, his jaw tight. "My sister, 20 years ago, a rival organization took her to get to my father. He refused to negotiate, said it would show weakness. They killed her and left her body as a message. I was powerless to stop it. I won't be powerless again." Maya's anger deflated slightly. "I'm sorry about your sister. But marriage?" "Kenji, That's not a solution. That's trading one impossible situation for another. It would be a legal marriage, but we'd keep it. Practical. You'd have your own space, your own life. Once the threat is neutralized, once the Koriyama Gumi gives up or is dealt with, we can quietly divorce. 6 months, maybe a year. Just long enough to establish the protection. And if I say no, then I'll find another way to protect you. But it will be harder, riskier, and there are no guarantees. This is the certainty. This is the one move they cannot counter. Maya walked to the window, her mind spinning. Outside, she could see the guards patrolling. This was her life now. Armed men and security protocols, and a Yakuza boss proposing marriage like it was a business transaction. Which, she realized, it was. For him, this was strategy, protection, the smart move in whatever game he was playing. But for her? This was her entire life veering off course in a way she couldn't have imagined 2 weeks ago. She thought about her mother again, about what she'd say. Probably something practical, like, sometimes survival means doing things that don't make sense. Her mother had been a survivor, had worked 3 jobs after the divorce, had fought cancer for 2 years even when the odds were impossible, had made sure Maya had a camera and dreams even when they could barely afford food. What would she choose? Probably the option that kept her alive, even if it was crazy. If I do this, Maya said slowly, I need rules, boundaries. This isn't real, and I need to make sure we both understand that. Whatever you need. She turned to face him. Separate rooms, separate lives as much as possible. I'm not playing housewife to a mob boss. I keep working, keep my independence. Agreed. Though I'd prefer you didn't go back to Pete's diner. Too exposed. I can help you find other work, or I can use the time to actually pursue photography professionally, build a portfolio, apply to galleries. Even better, what else? This ends the moment it's safe. No extensions, no excuses. We divorce as soon as the threat is gone. Agreed. And I need the truth. About everything. No more surprises, no more finding out important information after the fact. If I'm going to be connected to your world, I need to understand it. Kenji was quiet for a moment. That's harder. Some things are dangerous to know. More dangerous than being kidnapped by your rivals? I don't think so. Truth, Kenji. Or I walk out right now and take my chances. All right. Truth. I promise. Maya took a shaky breath. She couldn't believe she was considering this. Couldn't believe this was her life. Okay. Then yes, I'll marry you. But this is temporary, and the moment you break any of these rules, I'm gone. I don't care about tradition or honor or whatever. I'm gone. Understood. Kenji extended his hand, formal and businesslike. Thank you. I know this isn't what you want, but I will keep you safe. That's a promise I intend to keep. She shook his hand, and something passed between them. Not romance, not even friendship, but a kind of understanding. 2 people caught in impossible circumstances, doing what they had to do to survive. When she pulled her hand back, Maya felt like she'd just signed a contract written in invisible ink. The terms were clear, but the consequences were still being written. The next 3 days were a blur of paperwork and logistics. Kenji had a lawyer, a very discreet lawyer, who handled the marriage license with the kind of efficiency that suggested he'd done this before. There would be a small ceremony, just the signatures and minimum witnesses required. Nothing romantic, nothing public, just a legal transaction that would change everything. Maya called Marcus from a burner phone Takeshi provided. I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I've lost my mind. After what happened at the diner, nothing you say will surprise me. I'm getting married. Okay, that surprises me. To who? That guy who picked you up? The scary one with the expensive car? It's complicated, and I can't explain everything. But I'm okay. I'm safe. I just need you to know that I'm okay. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Maya, if you're in trouble, if someone's forcing you, I'm not being forced. I'm making a choice, a weird choice, an insane choice, but it's mine, I promise. Do you love him? I barely know him. Then why are you marrying him? Because sometimes survival looks like doing things that don't make sense. My mom used to say that. I finally understand what she meant. When she hung up, Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. Marcus was her only friend in Seattle, the only person from her normal life who gave a damn about what happened to her. And she couldn't even tell him the truth. Couldn't explain that she was marrying a Yakuza boss to avoid being kidnapped by rival mobsters. It sounded like a bad movie plot, not her actual life. The ceremony took place on a Thursday afternoon in Kenji's lawyer's office. Maya wore a simple dress, not white, because that felt too much like pretending this was real. Takeshi and another associate served as witnesses. The officiant was a judge who Kenji clearly had some kind of arrangement with, because he asked no questions and processed everything with brisk professionalism. Do you, Kenji Yamada, take Maya Reeves to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Maya Reeves, take Kenji Yamada to be your lawfully wedded husband? Maya's throat felt tight. This was it, the moment everything changed. I do. By the power vested in me by the state of Washington, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Kenji looked at Maya, a question in his eyes. She shook her head slightly. He nodded and simply took her hand, squeezed it once, and released it. No kiss, no romance. Just acknowledgement that they'd both just done something irrevocable for reasons that had nothing to do with love. They signed the papers. The judge filed everything electronically, and just like that, Maya Reeves became Maya Yamada. She stared at her signature on the marriage certificate, at her new legal name, and felt like she was looking at someone else's life. It's done, Kenji said quietly. You're protected now. Officially and absolutely. I don't feel protected. I feel like I just jumped off a cliff. I know, but I'll make sure you land safely. That's my job now. They returned to the safe house, where Takeshi had arranged a small dinner. Not a celebration exactly, but an acknowledgement of what had happened. Maya picked at her food, her mind miles away. Across the table, Kenji was on his phone typing rapidly in Japanese. Business never stopped, apparently. Even on his wedding day. Not that this was a real wedding day. Not that any of this was real. I need to tell you what happens next, Kenji said, setting down his phone. Tomorrow, I'll inform the council of our marriage. They'll verify the legal documentation, and then they'll issue a formal declaration. The Koriyama-gumi will receive notification that you're under permanent protection as my wife. They'll have to back off. What if they don't? They will. To harm you now would be to declare war on my organization. Even they're not reckless enough for that. And after? When this is over, what happens to me? Whatever you want. The marriage gives you protection, but it also gives you access, resources, connections. If you want to pursue photography seriously, I can make introductions. Gallery owners, collectors, publications. If you want to go back to school, I'll cover it. If you want to leave Seattle entirely and start over somewhere else, I'll arrange it. Consider this my apology for dragging you into my world. I'll give you the means to build the life you should have had. Maya studied him. That's generous, suspiciously generous. I'm not a good man, Maya. I've done things you'd find horrifying if you knew the details. But I try to honor my debts. You're in this situation because of me. The least I can do is give you a way out. What about you? Don't you want a real marriage eventually? Real family? Kenji's expression went carefully neutral. My work doesn't allow for that. Relationships are liabilities in my position. This arrangement, he gestured between them. This works because it's not real. Because you understand it's temporary. I don't have to worry about you becoming a target because you already are one. And now you're protected. It's cleaner this way. That's a lonely way to live. Yes. But it's safe. In my world, safe is more important than happy. Maya wanted to argue, but she was too tired. Instead, she excused herself and went to her room, the guest room, because despite being married, they maintained separate spaces. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Maya Yamada. She tested the name out loud. It felt foreign on her tongue, like trying on someone else's identity. Who was Maya Yamada? Not the broke waitress anymore. Not the failed photographer either. Someone new. Someone still being defined by circumstances beyond her control. She picked up her camera and scrolled through the photographs she'd taken over the past week. The guards, the safe house, the mountains at dawn, and the one of Kenji in the kitchen, looking lonely despite his power. She'd captured something true in that moment. Something he probably didn't mean to show. That was the power of photography. It revealed what people tried to hide. Over the next month, Maya's life settled into a strange new rhythm. The threat from the Koriyama Gumi evaporated as predicted once they received official notification of her marriage. Takeshi reported seeing their people withdraw from the city, returning to Osaka with their plans of expansion thwarted. The council had ruled. The protection was absolute. Maya was safe. But safety came with unexpected complications. She moved into Kenji's primary residence, a penthouse in downtown Seattle with views of the water and more space than 10 people could reasonably use. She had her own wing, her own studio where she could work on her photography. Kenji was rarely there. Always traveling, always in meetings, always managing the 1,000 details of running both a legitimate business and an illegal organization. They'd go days without seeing each other. When they did cross paths, their interactions were polite and distant. Roommates with paperwork, nothing more. Except Maya found herself noticing things. The way Kenji always made sure there was fresh coffee in the morning, even though he left before she woke up. The photography books that started appearing in her studio. Expensive volumes on masters like Sebastião Salgado and Diane Arbus. The fact that whenever she needed something, it appeared before she could ask. He was taking care of her in ways that went beyond their agreement. Not romantic exactly, but attentive. Thoughtful, like he was trying to make up for the chaos he'd brought into her life. And despite her best intentions, Maya found herself curious about him. About his life. About what it meant to run a Yakuza organization in modern America. She started asking Takeshi questions during the dinners he'd join her for when Kenji was away. Takeshi was surprisingly forthcoming, maybe because he'd been ordered to be, or maybe because he appreciated having someone to talk to who wasn't part of the usual hierarchy. The Yakuza isn't what people think, he explained one evening. Yes, there's violence, yes, there are illegal activities, but there's also structure, rules. We take care of our own. Yamada-san has been instrumental in moving the organization toward legitimate business interests. Some of the older members resist, but he's patient, strategic. He thinks in decades, not days. Does he ever hurt people? Personally, I mean? Takeshi chose his words carefully. Yamada-san does what's necessary to maintain order and protect the organization. He takes no pleasure in violence, but he doesn't shy away from it when required. You should understand that about him. He's capable of great kindness and great ruthlessness, depending on what the situation demands. Maya absorbed this. She was married to a man who could order someone's death as easily as he ordered coffee. It should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself trying to reconcile the Kenji she'd seen. Quiet, thoughtful, burdened by old grief, with the Oyabun who commanded an organization built on fear and loyalty. She started a new photography project, documenting her strange life. Not the illegal parts, she wasn't stupid, but the textures of this world she'd fallen into. The penthouse at dawn, the security guards at shift change, the way light reflected off the waterfront. She was careful not to photograph faces or identifying details, but she captured the atmosphere. The weight. The isolation of living in a gilded cage. One photograph she took was of Kenji's office late at night. She'd wandered in there looking for a book and found his desk covered in papers, a cold cup of coffee forgotten beside his laptop. The room felt like him. Controlled chaos. Everything serving a purpose. Nothing decorative or warm. She clicked the shutter without thinking, capturing the emptiness. When she developed it later, she saw what her subconscious had noticed. The office was immaculate except for one thing. A small photo frame, turned face down on the corner of the desk. She'd been too respectful to turn it over, but now she wondered who was in that photo. His sister? His parents? Someone else he'd lost? 6 weeks into the marriage, Maya received an email that made her hands shake. A gallery in Pioneer Square, a real gallery, one she'd admired from afar for years, wanted to meet with her about her urban photography series. Someone had recommended her work. The email didn't say who, but Maya had her suspicions. She found Kenji in his office the next morning. "Did you send my portfolio to Judith Chen at the Cascade Gallery?" He looked up from his laptop. "Good morning to you too. Coffee?" "Kenji, did you? I may have mentioned to an associate who knows Ms. Chen that you were an emerging talent worth meeting. Was that overstepping?" "I don't know, was it? You're talented, Maya. You deserve to have your work seen. I simply facilitated an introduction. What you do with it is entirely up to you." She wanted to be angry, wanted to accuse him of manipulating her life, but the truth was, she'd been trying to get gallery attention for years with no success. Kenji had connections she didn't, and he'd used them to help her. Was that so wrong? "Thank you," she said finally. "But in the future, ask first. I don't want to build a career on your connections. I want it to be mine." "Understood. For what it's worth, I didn't tell Ms. Chen we're married. I kept your maiden name in the recommendation. Whatever comes from the meeting will be because of your talent, not my influence." The meeting with Judith Chen happened 3 days later. Maya brought her portfolio, her hands sweating, her heart racing. This was everything she'd wanted when she moved to Seattle. A chance, recognition, a foot in the door. Judith was a sharp woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of critical eye that made Maya want to hide her work in shame and thrust it forward for approval simultaneously. She went through the portfolio slowly, methodically, saying nothing. When she finally looked up, her expression was unreadable. "This is good work, raw, honest. You have a perspective that's interesting. Not quite there yet, but close." She tapped one of the recent photographs, the image of Kenji's empty office. "This one, though. This one is exceptional. The composition, the emotion in the emptiness. If you can produce a series at this level, I'd be interested in a show. 6 months from now, maybe 8. Would you be interested?" Maya could barely breathe. "Yes, absolutely, yes." "Good. I'll need 12 to 15 pieces. Cohesive theme, consistent quality. Can you do that?" "I can do that." They shook hands, discussed timelines and logistics, and Maya floated out of the gallery in a daze. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. A show, a real show at a real gallery. This was the beginning of everything she'd dreamed about. She called Kenji from the street, not even thinking about it. When he answered, she could hear voices in the background. He was in a meeting. "Maya, everything all right? I got the show. She wants 12 to 15 pieces for an exhibition in 6 to 8 months. There was a pause, and then she heard him speaking to someone in Japanese, probably dismissing whoever he was meeting with. When his voice came back, it was warm. "That's excellent. Congratulations. I knew she'd see your talent. Thank you. For the introduction. And for believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. You did the work, Maya. I just opened a door. You walked through it on your own merit." After they hung up, Maya realized something strange. She'd called him first. Not Marcus, not anyone from her old life. She'd called Kenji to share her good news. When had that happened? When had he become the person she wanted to celebrate with? That evening, Kenji came home early, a rarity. He found Maya in her studio, surrounded by prints, organizing potential pieces for the exhibition. "I brought champagne," he said, holding up a bottle, "to celebrate properly." They sat on the balcony, glasses of expensive champagne catching the sunset light, and for the first time since their rushed courthouse wedding, the conversation felt easy, natural. They talked about photography, about art, about what Maya wanted to say with her exhibition. Kenji was surprisingly knowledgeable, asking questions that made her think deeper about her work. At some point, Maya realized she was enjoying his company, not tolerating it, genuinely enjoying it. "Can I ask you something?" she said, emboldened by champagne and curiosity. "The photo frame on your desk, the one that's face down. Who's in it?" Kenji's expression shuddered slightly. "My sister. I keep it face down because looking at it is difficult. But I can't put it away completely. She deserves to be remembered, even if remembering hurts." "What was her name?" "Akiko. She was 3 years younger than me. Brilliant. Kind. She wanted to be a doctor, help people. The organization, my father's world, it killed her before she could become anything. I'm sorry. That's why you helped me, isn't it? I reminded you of her. At first, yes. But Maya, you're not her. You're your own person. And somewhere along the way, helping you stopped being about her and started being about you. About believing you deserved better than the hand life dealt you. Something in Maya's chest tightened. This was dangerous territory. They had rules, boundaries. This was temporary. But sitting here in the fading light, sharing champagne and truths, it didn't feel temporary. It felt real. Kenji, what happens when this is over? When it's safe for us to divorce? Do we just go back to being strangers? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the water. I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We should probably figure it out. Because this, she gestured between them. This is starting to feel less like an arrangement and more like something else. Would that be a bad thing? I don't know. Would it? Before Kenji could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed. The warm, open man she'd been talking to vanished, replaced by the oyabun. I need to take this. I'm sorry. He walked inside, his voice sharp as he answered in Japanese. Maya sat alone on the balcony, the champagne turning sour in her stomach. That was the problem, she realized. Just when things started to feel normal, the reality of who Kenji was and what he did would crash back in. She wasn't just married to a man. She was married to a position, a legacy, a world of violence and secrets that she could never fully be part of. When Kenji came back 20 minutes later, his expression was grim. There's a situation. I need to leave. I don't know when I'll be back. Is it dangerous? Everything in my world is dangerous, but I'll be careful. He started to leave, then turned back. Maya, thank you for today. For sharing your success with me. It meant more than you know. Then he was gone, leaving Maya alone with half a bottle of champagne and 1,000 questions she couldn't answer. She watched the lights of the city blink on one by one as darkness fell, and wondered what situation he was handling. Wondered if he was safe. Wondered when she'd started caring so much about the well-being of a Yakuza boss she'd married out of necessity. The night stretched on. Maya tried to work on her photography, tried to distract herself, but her mind kept wandering. At 2 a.m. she finally gave up and went to bed, her phone on the nightstand in case Kenji called. He didn't. At 4 a.m., she was still awake when she heard the penthouse door open. Footsteps in the hallway. She got up and found Kenji in the kitchen, pouring himself whiskey with hands that trembled slightly. His suit was rumpled. There was blood on his collar. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice sharp with fear. He looked up, surprised to see her. "It's not mine. I'm fine." "That's not fine, Kenji. That's someone else's blood on your shirt. Maya, go back to bed. You don't want to know about this. Stop protecting me from the truth. You promised. No more surprises." She walked closer, studying his face. He looked exhausted, haunted. "What happened tonight?" "The Koriyama-gumi sent someone. Not for you. They wouldn't dare. But they wanted to send a message. There was an altercation. It's handled now." "Handled meaning what?" "Meaning I did what was necessary to protect my people and maintain order. Meaning I made choices tonight that you're better off not knowing about." Maya reached out slowly, carefully, and touched his arm. "Kenji, I knew who you were when I agreed to this. I knew what you do. You don't have to hide that part of yourself from me." "Yes, I do. Because if you see all of what I am, what I'm capable of, you'll look at me differently. And I don't think I could bear that." The vulnerability in his voice broke something open in Maya's chest. This powerful man, this oyabun who commanded fear and loyalty, was afraid of what she'd think of him. Afraid of losing whatever connection had been building between them. "Try me," she said softly. "Tell me what happened. The truth." So he did. He told her about the Koriyama-gumi's assassin, about the knife fight in the warehouse, about the choice he'd made to end a life rather than risk more violence later. He spoke in careful, clinical terms, But Maya could see the weight of it in his eyes. Could see that despite his ruthlessness, despite his capability for violence, it cost him something each time. He wasn't a monster. He was a man doing monstrous things because his world demanded it. When he finished, he drained his whiskey and waited for her reaction. Waited for her to recoil, to be disgusted, to remember that she'd married a killer. Instead, Maya stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, just held him while he stood rigid with surprise. "You're carrying so much," she whispered. "You don't have to carry it alone." Slowly, carefully, Kenji's arms came up around her. He buried his face in her hair and just breathed. They stood like that for a long time, two people who shouldn't have found each other, who'd been thrown together by accident and were discovering that sometimes accidents led to something true. When they finally pulled apart, Kenji cupped her face in his hands. "This wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to stay safe, take what you needed, and leave when it was over. I wasn't supposed to—" He stopped himself. "To what?" "To care about you. To need you. To look forward to coming home because you're here." Maya's breath caught. "Kenji, I know. We have an agreement. This is temporary. But Maya, I don't want it to be temporary anymore. I want—" He stopped, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter what I want. You deserve a normal life. A good man, not someone whose hands are stained with blood. What if I want to make my own choices about what I deserve? Then choose carefully. Because being with me, truly being with me, means accepting all of this. The violence, the secrets, the danger that never fully goes away. It means living in my world, not just observing it from the edges." Maya thought about everything that had happened since that wrong number text. Thought about the woman she'd been. Broke, exhausted, hopeless, and the woman she was becoming. Stronger, braver, seen. And yes, it was complicated. Yes, Kenji's world was dark and dangerous. But he'd given her back her camera, her dreams, herself. And somewhere along the way, she'd started to care about him too. About the lonely man underneath the oyabun. About the person who protected fiercely and loved cautiously because loss had taught him that caring was the most dangerous thing of all. "I'm already in your world," she said finally. "I'm your wife." Even if it started as pretend, it stopped being pretend somewhere along the way. At least for me. "For me too," Kenji admitted. "Maya, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone without putting them in danger. But I know I don't want to lose you. Not when this 6 months is up. Not ever. Then we figure it out. Together. No more separate lives. No more pretending this is just an arrangement. We try. Really try." Kenji smiled. A real smile. The first she'd seen from him. "That's terrifying." "Good. You should be terrified. I'm terrifying." He laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so genuine, that Maya laughed too. And then they were kissing, finally crossing the line they'd been dancing around for weeks. It wasn't the gentle, romantic kiss of fairy tales. It was desperate and honest, two people who'd survived too much and found each other in the aftermath. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kenji rested his forehead against hers. "No more separate rooms," he said. "No more separate lives," she agreed. They went to bed together that night, Maya in Kenji's arms, listening to his heartbeat steady into sleep. Outside, the city sprawled beneath them. Dangerous and beautiful, and full of possibility. Somewhere out there, threats remained. Business continued. The Yakuza world kept turning with all its violence and tradition and unforgiving rules. But in this moment, in this room, there was just the two of them. A broke waitress and a Yakuza boss, brought together by accident and choosing to stay together on purpose. The next morning, Maya woke to find Kenji already up, standing by the window with his phone. He glanced back at her and smiled. "Good morning, wife." "Good morning, husband." "Takeshi's bringing breakfast. I told him I'm taking the day off." "When was the last time I took a day off?" "I'm guessing never." "Correct. So today, we do whatever you want. No business, no obligations, just us. What do you want to do?" Maya thought about it. "I want to photograph you, really photograph you. Not the Oyabun. You. The person you are when nobody's watching. That's what you want for our first real day together? A photo shoot? I'm a photographer. This is how I see things, how I understand them. Let me see you, Kenji. All of you. So they spent the day in the penthouse, Maya with her camera, and Kenji slowly, carefully letting his guard down. She photographed him reading, making coffee, standing on the balcony watching the water. She photographed his hands, scarred and strong. She photographed his smile when he forgot to be careful. She photographed the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. By evening, she had a collection of images that told a story. Not the story the world saw, the powerful Oyabun, the ruthless businessman, but the truth underneath. A man who'd survived through strength but longed for softness. A man who protected fiercely because he'd lost too much. A man who'd learned to live alone and was slowly, carefully learning how to let someone in. Can I see them? Kenji asked. Maya showed him. He went through each image slowly, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked at her with something like wonder. Is this how you see me? It's who you are when you let yourself be. I look human. You are human. That's the whole point. Kenji pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. Include these in your exhibition. I want people to see what you see. You sure? It's pretty revealing. I trust you. With this. With everything. 3 months later, Maya's exhibition opened at the Cascade Gallery. The collection was called Accidental Connections, 12 photographs documenting her strange new life. The penthouse at dawn, security guards changing shifts, Kenji's empty office, the blood-stained collar she'd found in the laundry. And yes, several portraits of Kenji himself, carefully cropped to hide identifying details, but revealing everything about the man underneath. The opening was packed. Critics came. Collectors came. And standing in the back, wearing a suit that probably cost more than the artwork, was Kenji. He'd brought several associates with him, Takeshi and others, all of them looking slightly uncomfortable in the art gallery setting. But they were there to support their Oyabun's wife, to show that she was one of them now. Judith Chen found Maya an hour into the opening. Congratulations, this is exceptional work. We've already had 3 serious offers. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for proving me right. Who's the subject in the portraits? He's captivating. Maya smiled, catching Kenji's eye across the room. That's my husband. You should bring him over. I'd love to meet him. Maybe later. He's not really comfortable with attention. What an understatement. The head of Seattle's largest Yakuza organization, standing in an art gallery, supporting his wife's exhibition. If anyone here knew who he really was, they'd probably run screaming. But they didn't know. They just saw a well-dressed man supporting his partner. Normal. Domestic. Real. Later, after the crowds thinned, Kenji found Maya standing in front of her favorite piece, the photograph of his office, empty and sad. You know what I see when I look at this now? He asked. What? Before you, this is what my life looked like. Empty. Purposeful, but hollow. And now, he gestured around the gallery at all the images she'd created. Now there's evidence that I exist as more than just a position, that I'm seen as a person, not just a role. You did that. We did that. Together. Together, he agreed. I like the sound of that. They left the gallery hand in hand, Takeshi and the security team falling into formation around them. It was after midnight, and the Seattle streets were quiet. As they walked to the car, sirens wailed in the distance, police or ambulance, impossible to tell. Once, that sound would have made Maya nervous. Now it was just the background noise of city life. She'd changed so much since that wrong number text, so much since she'd been a desperate waitress begging for time on her rent. Do you ever regret it? Kenji asked suddenly. That text, meeting me, everything that followed? Maya thought about it honestly. Sometimes I regret the fear, the danger, the night I hid in a bathroom while men tried to kill each other over me. But regret you? Regret us? Never. Even though I ruined your normal life? My normal life was slowly killing me. You gave me a chance to live. Really live. How could I regret that? They reached the car, and Kenji opened her door. But before she climbed in, Maya turned back to look at the gallery. At her name on the window in elegant script, Maya Yamada, Accidental Connections. She'd kept his name, not because she had to for protection anymore. The Koriyamagumi had long since withdrawn, the threat neutralized, but because somewhere along the way, it had become hers. She'd become Maya Yamada, the photographer, the wife, the woman who'd accidentally texted a Yakuza boss and found her life in the reply. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For answering. That first text. You could have just blocked the number, could have ignored me, but you answered, and you kept answering." "Best wrong number I ever received," Kenji said with a smile. Then more seriously, "I love you, Maya. I didn't know how to say it before. Didn't know if I was allowed. But I do. I love you. I love you too, even though you're complicated and dangerous and sometimes terrifying." Because I'm complicated and dangerous and sometimes terrifying? Maybe a little bit because of that. They drove home through the sleeping city, the lights reflecting off the water, the world continuing on around them. Somewhere in Seattle, the Yakuza business continued its careful operations. Somewhere, Kenji's associates were handling problems and maintaining order. Somewhere, the dangerous world he inhabited kept spinning with all its violence and consequence. But in this car, in this moment, there was just the two of them. A broke waitress who wasn't broke anymore. A Yakuza boss who'd learned how to let someone see underneath the armor. Two people who'd found each other by accident and chosen each other on purpose. And sometimes, Maya thought as she watched the city lights blur past, sometimes the best things in life start with a wrong number. With sirens wailing and cars flooding your street. With fear and confusion and choices that don't make sense. Sometimes survival means accepting help from dangerous strangers. Sometimes love means seeing someone fully. Violence and kindness, darkness and light. And choosing them anyway. Sometimes, the story you end up living is better than any story you could have planned.